My name is Matt Curtis. I am the graphic designer behind Mealtime Sabotage. I worked on the game with two friends, Daniel, who is programming and number crunching, as well as Evan, who is logistics, strategy, and number crunching. I try to avoid numbers as much as possible, so I drew pretty pictures. For those of you who have followed us up till this point, you'll know that we successfully funded a Kickstarter project for a physical card game. What we are now in the process of doing is moving from physical to digital. We're developing an iOS version of Mealtime Sabotage. Now, the reason that there's a video about that is because there will actually be a lot of videos about that. What we're going to do is we're going to document the process, essentially what it looks like to develop an app. Now, in our circumstance, it's a little bit unique because all of us have day jobs. This is a hobby project for us. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to mail it in. That doesn't mean we're going to cut corners. That means that, well, one, we don't have loads of time to spend on it, so we try to maximize the time that we do have. But also, we can let people in on the journey of this process because of the fact that we don't work for a major company that won't let us disclose information, or we're not going to be super secretive about the stuff that we're working on. Now, in large part because we don't really know what we're doing. I mean, we sort of do. Daniel's released an app before, and I'm a designer in my day job, and so these elements aren't exactly completely new, but we've never done this process together, and so I thought it would be a lot of fun if we brought you all along for the ride. And on top of that, my hope is that those of you who have been down this road before, you can give us a little bit of wisdom in terms of what it is that we're doing, whether it be right or wrong. So I'm really excited about this because, well, in part because usually when you do a video, you sort of know the outcome, but we don't know what's going to happen. For all we know, we're going to scrap the app in 4 months. And I hope Daniel doesn't watch this video because he's doing a ton of programming already to get us to the point where we feel pretty comfortable about pursuing this further. So for those of you who don't know what Mealtime Sabotage is, it's a card game. The goal is to complete a meal. You have an entree, 2 sides, a drink, and a dessert. Now, the winner has these 5 cards on their plate, or their complete meal, and it adds up to the lowest number of calories. Now, let me show you some of the food cards. Dropped a couple of them here. So the foods that you have an entree. So here's a hot dog, for example, 550 calories. And then here's a dessert, strawberry milkshake, 600 calories. Quite a bit, quite a bit for a dessert, as you think about it. If I'm eating a hot dog and what I get for dessert is more than my actual entree, that's significant. So there's a passive form of education that happens here about calories. One of the things that I found is that when you're aware of the facts of life, it helps you make better decisions. And so in the context of this game, we're helping people understand the fact that food has a calorie value. Now, of course, that's not the only thing that's significant when it comes to eating healthy and all of that, but it's a starting point. And so the idea is to educate people in a way that's really a lot of fun to play. So you have some items down on your table, but it seems kind of boring so far. Well, that's where the sabotage comes in. The first card is halvesies. This cuts your calories in half. You put it on your side. So it's an advantageous card to play on yourself. But the fun really happens when you start putting cheese on other people. I think cheese is probably one of my favorite cards just because I love the giant cheese wheels. So now you drop this on somebody and you've added 150 calories to their meal. Now, there are a few cards that are interjected into the game. They're called character cards. And here's one, the clumsy waiter. Remove all drinks from the table. So now all of a sudden you've built a complete meal. You feel like you're making great progress. Somebody drops that card and the dynamics totally change. You went from being in the lead to now maybe not having a shot. In fact, I was playing the game with my family. My 6-year-old loves playing. He loves doing the math involved and counting up his calories at the end. And he also loves trying to prolong the game as much as possible. So the other day I had a complete meal, which means I can now play entrees and sides and desserts on other people who don't have a full meal yet. And as I was trying to make progress and basically crush everyone, he discarded a whole bunch of my cards. And then all of a sudden I looked down and I had 2 things on my plate. So the game is really driven through social interaction. My son loves dropping a card and cackling with delight that he's just done something to you, good or bad. And so that's an element for us that we're trying to capture as we translate this to an iOS app. Now, for those of you who have played iOS games, you know that you're usually not playing them interactively with other people. Or I guess if you're playing a game on your phone, you're usually disconnected, not super engaged. And so that's one of the things that we're really trying to capture is at the very core, what are these elements that make this game in a social sense really entertaining and really fun? And then how do we replicate them in a digital space? And so as we go through this process, we'll talk through some of these ideas, and we'll talk through the things that we're making decisions on and how it is, I guess, really how we're leaning and the kind of decision that we're making. But I also want to kind of reveal some of those nuts and bolts things that are happening to us that are really everyday concerns for somebody who's developing an app. These are things that you have to consider and things you have to be aware of. So one of the things that I wanted to share, we've started using a tool called Slack. It's an app for Android, for iOS. I think I even saw that they have one for Windows Phone. There's also desktop, a counterpart. And so Daniel and I have been doing most of the work up till this point. All three of us were heavily involved in the development of the game, strategy, balancing, all of those kinds of things on the front end. Currently, Evan is in process of getting his master's, and so he is justifiably going to be less involved in the process during this phase. So Daniel and I have been working, me through design phase stuff, him through programming and getting the game functioning. Over lunch one day, he said, oh, let's just write an AI. So he wrote an AI, and now all of a sudden we have a computer to play against. And for us, the single player experience was not very important going into the app. If you would have asked us how high of a value do you think it is to have a single player experience, I think we would have rated it pretty low. It's nice, but we're happy to ship without it. As it turns out, the single player experience has been critical for us because it allows us to play the game a lot. And the more we play the game, the more we find these little idiosyncrasies that either work really well and we want to accentuate, or things that are just clunky and we have to get rid of. So that's one of those things for us that we sort of accidentally discovered something that's very valuable, or at least has been very valuable for us. So back to Slack. Slack allows us to maintain conversations in a threaded format. And so what that means is if I'm talking about UI issues, then we'll post in the thread about UI. If he's talking about in-app purchases, then I can talk about in-app purchases as well. And so what happens is we don't have one email that has 5 different topics so that we miss everything. Now we have 5 different messages threaded into 5 different threads, so now we can easily access the information and figure out what it's related to. So it's been extremely helpful. The reason I bring that up, 1, is because it's a very helpful tool, but 2, because I am writing things in it that relate to this video. I'm going to commit to posting this video or a video once a week. Feels scary to commit to that. But what I want to do is I want to just give you a week in review. This is what a week looks like for us. Now, some weeks may be non-eventful, not much going on, or other weeks may be huge, maybe a big breakthrough, a ton of progress, whatever it is. So I wanted to walk through a few things that we've already encountered and that we've already addressed. So the first thing, Daniel was exporting a version of the app, and he's also been working on a different app for another company, or for a company, an organization that he's doing a freelance project for. And what happened was his Xcode environment, or the way he wrote it was, his Xcode setup must have gotten tweaked or messed up by working on this other app. So what happened was he exported a new app for us, and we both downloaded it, and it didn't work. Okay, so then he tried something else, he exported it, and it didn't work again. And so that was one of those interesting things where if you're managing multiple projects concurrently, there's some interesting problems that can happen when that comes up. I know that from working with code. If I'm working on multiple websites, I keep thinking to myself, why is this not here and why is that here? And oh, because that's a whole different project. I'm just seeing letters on a white screen, but it's not clicking with me. And so that is a very helpful thing to keep in mind. Also, Apple recommends having multiple devices dedicated for development. We thought that was kind of crazy, and so because we're just a bunch of, a couple guys who are doing this in our free time, there's no way we were going to consider buying multiple iPads or iPhones or whatever. Well, as it turns out, it's actually super helpful to have multiple devices. My daughter inadvertently helped with this. She's 3. She was walking down the hallway and she dropped my wife's iPad and the screen shattered. And so rather than having little kids use the iPad and get glass in their fingers, we decided, hey, let's make it a prototype or let's make it a testing device. So it's a testing device. So we have one iPad that's completely dedicated, and then Daniel was able to figure out a way to make another one work for him. But as you're testing Game Center things, as you're testing, as things are required to be sandboxed, it's really, really helpful to have a device or some devices. They don't have to be latest model. They don't have to be, go out and buy a new iPhone 6 Plus or anything. But having something to test on is very helpful. Also for us, we are testing, we are supporting iOS 7. And so what that means for us is that we're supporting the iPhone 4S. What that means for us is that we're supporting a small screen. So that's been an interesting challenge for me personally with the design side of things, because when I'm designing something, I think of what's the most real estate that I need to be able to take advantage of. Well, in this instance, now it's what is the smallest real estate where this can function. So I wanted to show you a glimpse of what it is we're working on with that in mind. So here's the game board for the iOS, or for the iPhone 4S. It's a little sloppy. There's other design assets on the side. But one of the things that's interesting, the calories here, those are high priority for me, but I feel like they're too small on the device. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to shrink these cards in the middle, figure out a way to handle the hand a little bit differently. But I don't know how familiar you are with the look of the cards, but let's zoom in on Cheese here. I'll back out just a touch. If you recall, Cheese actually looks different in the printed card than it does on the digital version. Now, that has nothing to do with the fact that we just changed our minds and all of a sudden we like something different. I really like the design of these cards, and I think they function extremely well for a physical card. What we've run into, however, is on a small screen like the 4S, this calorie number is very important. And so when you're looking at this from in a much smaller view, it's important. The illustration, and it pains me to say this, but the illustration is completely irrelevant. Maybe not completely, but it's mostly irrelevant. The absolute critical information is the calorie count. That's how you play the game. That is what is happening, and that's the information that impacts the way the game is played. It impacts your strategy, whether you win or lose, all of those things. That had to be elevated to the highest level. So that's just an example of some of the things that we're running into when it comes to game board layout. Also, this is just one layout. I still have more layouts to do for the 6, the 6 Plus, the iPad mini, the iPad. Those are all things, I guess iPad Air now, but those are all things that we have to wrangle as we're going through this process. And then the last thing is a little bit of a practical one, just financially for us. We don't have a ton of money that we have saved away to throw at this. We've saved money from our Kickstarter campaign. We funded pretty much at goal, so we didn't have this, gigantic bank account of gold bars like some of these campaigns have, which is fantastic, but that's just not where we're at. So one of the things that we ran into, this is the original Mealtime Sabotage logo. We purchased a font. Love the font. I think it's fantastic. But because we're going to be using in a different scenario now, there's an additional font license that we need to get. That's just the nuts and bolts of licensing a font. So what happened was we decided, in essence, that we're not sure we want to spend the extra money. I mean, it's a couple $100 that we're talking about in order to use it in all applications that we would want to use it. That would give us the freedom to use it wherever we want. And so there's no knocking the font. I actually like the font quite a bit better than what I've come up with so far. However, we are willing to make a branding change in order to save that money for ourselves. In the context of the card game, we love having what we have, and we are well within the rights of the font to have it on, considering the number of decks we've printed and all that kind of stuff. But in the digital application, there's really not that much that the logo is driving. It's not on the backs of cards because there are no backs of cards. There's a very, very small logo that you'll see on the game board, and then additionally you'll see the logo on the home screen. But at the end of the day, it's really not critical for us to have the same font and the same logo. And so that's a way we can save $500 off of our development costs just by making a simple design decision to tweak things. So overall, I'm excited about these videos simply because it'll be helpful for me to kind of maybe in some cases lament where we are. But beyond that, it's going to be interesting to see what it is this process unfolds. I'm excited to go back and kind of watch these videos as we chronicle this. So I hope you enjoy the ride. One of the things that I think would be kind of fun to do, I get very stuck on a certain type of music and a certain group. So for me, I wanted to do what's the music that's been kind of pulling us through our design stuff. For me, it's Seven Lions. That's a one I've been listening to lately. I'm a little concerned that that'll be my answer for about 2 months, but I'll try to mix it up a little bit so that there's a wider variety of things that you can reference. But yeah, I'm also going to put a link for how the game's played, the original teaser video that we put together that shows a nice walkthrough of the gameplay, so you can get a sense of what Mealtime Sabotage is all about. And then yeah, feel free to comment, subscribe, share with your friends. We would love to have as many people as possible with us for this ride.